Hello and welcome again back to The Truth, Why Store Shelves Are Causing Harm to Your Health. I have the absolute amazing Alan Ogden on here today with us. I almost drew a blank, so I apologize, Alan. I'm so excited about this. I am so excited right now. Guys, let me tell you why I'm excited to introduce you to Alan Ogden, okay? And I am going to use this book. At first, I wasn't going to, but now I am. So let me explain this to you. So Mr. Alan Ogden, he is a pharmacist that is a specialty in pediatrics and geriatrics. Is that right, Alan? Do I have that
Yes, that's
correct?
correct. Yes.
And then he also is a product advisor, and you're on the scientific board for that product. Is that correct?
I've
Or
been
you
on
are
se
the?
I'm on, yeah, I've been on several scientific boards because I'm a certified, not only certified product nutrition advisor, I'm a certified sport nutrition advisor. So I've
Right.
served on several boards.
Several, and I know Alan from the past, and we've stayed in touch throughout the years, but also Alan is a genetic consultant as well. So Alan has many years and as well personal experiences on what we're going to talk about today. And you see me rub my hands together because I'm super excited about this topic, guys. We are going to talk today again on this topic, the truth, why store shelves are harming your health. And Alan, before we kick this off, I would like for you to go ahead and reintroduce yourself, but also tell us how you came to be where you're at in this profession today. So take it away.
Well, thank you. It's so great to be here and to be with you,
Thank,
particularly.
thank
We've just had a great relationship over the years. And so you asking me to contribute to this was just made my heart as happy as yours. And so I think we do need to kind of start at the beginning. Uh, if you asked a 5-year-old on the street today what they wanted to be, that might be a dangerous question. But back when I was a 5-year-old, I wanted to be a pharmacist. Now, I don't think many kids would say pharmacist. They probably wouldn't know the word or didn't know what that meant.
That's absolutely true. It's true.
But I was exposed to a pharmacist early in my life. Unfortunately, I witnessed a very violent murder.
Fine.
And my response as a child, because you don't have the logic
Right.
to reason that through, you're very highly emotional. So I got very sick. And I was living with my great auntie at the time. Just for family circumstances, my father had been unfortunately tragically killed in a drunk driving accident. He wasn't drunk, the other person was. And so all my brothers were in school and my mom needed somebody to take care of me. So I was in this city that I wasn't familiar with and living with this lady I knew her,
Right.
but not that well. So I got really sick. And she just took me by the hand and we walked down the street a block or two, went into this little store, and there was a man there with his white coat on. He was very kind, and he mixed me up something. I just remember that it was pink. I drank it, and I said to my aunt and the universe, I'm going to do that someday. I'm going to take people's pain away. No, I completely forgot that and became a hockey referee.
Oh, wow. That's opposite ends of the spectrum here.
Isn't it
Okay.
ever? Isn't
Right.
it ever?
Okay.
So I could make more money as a hockey referee than I could working in a store as a young individual back in those days. And I got to skate with my friends. Some of them stayed friends. Some of them, of course, didn't. But
Right.
I got paid very well to be a hockey referee. And one night after I had refed a couple of games, I was actually walking home, and I met this young gentleman. I didn't know him, but he was a friend of one of my brothers. And he said to me, hey, listen, I would like to quit my job at this local drugstore, but he won't let me until I replace myself. Would you like my job at the drugstore? I thought, why not? I'll check that out. So we walked into this drugstore, Eric and we walked into the drugstore, and I met the pharmacist. And honestly, Michelle, when I walked into the store, it felt like home.
Oh, wow.
And so, obviously that emotional experience I had before. And if people walk into drugstores, they do have a certain smell, especially little community drugstores. There's kind of this medicinal smell to them.
It
And I
does.
walked in and I went, oh my gosh, this just feels so good. And I met this pharmacist and we had this conversation. He said to me, well, I'm looking for a delivery boy. And I said, well, I don't have my driver's license for another month. And he's like, okay, well, I'll do the deliveries and for the month. And then as long as you take that over. So I started working in this store and that was it for me. I was just like, this is really, oh my, this is just what I want to do. And the gentleman I worked for, now pharmacists have changed over time.
I was going to
So
say.
yeah, quite a bit. So back when I worked with this gentleman, he would have a lineup at his store door every morning of people that would come in and they would first check with Mr. Walker to see if they should go to the doctor or if he had something. So I like to put it this way, back in the day when I started in pharmacy, people would come into the store and they'd say, do you have something for that? And they were looking for an alternative to medicine. As I moved through my profession, that question, do you have something, that became, do you have a medicine? Do you have something that will fix this quick?
Right.
I would say in the last years that I practiced medicine, we're seeing more of that change where people are coming into the store saying, do you have something for that? And they're, once again, they're saying, is there an alternative to the medicine?
That's good to hear.
And yeah, and it is good to hear that people are certainly more open. And that is one of the benefits of what the experience we've just went through over the last few years is people have realized there are alternatives that may be, really viable to what they're suffering through. And so I had this just great experience as a young person. I'm not very good at school. If I was to go to school today, as I was back then, I would have been put in a special class. First of all, I'm left-handed. I'm dyslexic. I have all these challenges, learning challenges. So I got through university literally by memorize. I didn't take very many notes. I had to memorize everything because I couldn't write. There was no point me writing stuff down. I had to have help doing my lab reports and so on. And I later learned like how to overcome that challenge of mixing, particularly mixing up numbers, which, I'm in a science course and numbers are kind of important, right?
Trying to know those numbers, yes.
Yeah, got to know those numbers. So I did get through university. And just as I was graduating from university, my dear grandma passed away. Now, all my grandparents, except one, were in their 90s. They lived very well into their 90s. They were healthy. My grandma passed away. And I was the closest person because my parents happened to be in Europe at that time. So they called me. I took care of that situation until the family could get together.
Sure.
And what had happened to my grandma, she had fallen. She broke her hip. And most people don't know that hip fractures are one of the leading causes of death in elderly people. And the reason for that, and we're going to talk more about this later, the reason for that is once you break a hip, what's in your hip that could cause such a reaction? It's where you are still making stem cells as an older person. And when you break your hip, you immediately lose 50% of your immunity. Boom, gone. So if we don't know how to make up for that, so I was very moved then to go back to school and take geriatric pharmacy. I wanted to be able to help all these elderly people understand what they could do to maintain their health long term.
Right.
And so that's what I ended up at the University of Denver. Taking geriatric pharmacy. We didn't have, back in those days in Canada, we didn't have a doctorate of pharmacy degree. They do now. It's just been here since 2016.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to piece all these courses together.
I was going to say, yeah, that's a lot of work
geriatric
on you.
pharmacy.
Wow.
And so then I thought, well, what about kids? Right. So I actually got a hold of a gynecologist and an obstetrics gynecologist individual. And I said, I'd like to, as a pharmacist, I'd like to do a program with the mothers. And my thinking was, if we can put these people on a diet that covered all their amino acids, their vitamins, all the things we knew at that time, is there a chance that we could somehow maybe prevent some of these childhood diseases that are on the rise? So autism, ADHD, infantile asthma, which is a big deal.
Right.
There's about 35, 40 million people in the United States that suffer terribly from asthma. So for 4 years, we did this program with expectant mothers, and we had them on this diet, and then we followed through with them after for those kids until they were 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And amazingly, in that, and this is not a protocol study, so it's not something that we could write up, but it was just us doing our work.
Right.
In a very high incident area. So in the area I was practicing at the time, childhood asthma was very high. Other particular problems were very high in infants. During that 4 years, in his practice, out of 100 kids, we only had one that was born with infantile asthma, and all of her siblings had infantile asthma. And fortunately, she used a ventilator for about 2 months, and she doesn't need. I still know her to this day. By the way, it's amazing.
Wow.
She graduated with our daughter in school, so we still have contact with her, and she's never had to treat her asthma again. So that kind of opened me up to the idea that there's medicine in food. Now, I had studied that in school. I'm one of the last classes of pharmacy in North America that had to take, as a required course, pharmacognosy. Now, I can tell you, Michelle, you're going to win every trivia contest from here on in if you ask people if they know what pharmacognosy is.
All right. I'm listening.
Yeah, pharmacognosy. And pharmacognosy literally is the study of food as medicine.
Okay.
So I studied that. And when I went into practice in this small town store, that store had been there since 1901. I was the third owner. And in the basement literally was barks and leaves and all sorts of herbs and different things that they had used. I ended up donating that to a museum. And fortunately I did, because there was a flood about 2 weeks later. But all of these things and all the weights that they used to use, avoirdupois weights, and all the things from 100 years of the practice of pharmacy. So really, I had such a great experience. Then I, doing something very normal, at least I think it's normal. Graham, our son, and I were out skipping stones in a beautiful national park in Canada called Banff. Some of your viewers will recognize Banff. They may have been there. It's a very, very beautiful spot. Actually, it's the second spot in the world for people to fly in for a wedding. It's so beautiful, and it's very busy in the summer, people having weddings there. We were just skipping stones. Didn't think about it. And 3 days later, I had this monstrous headache. I had never had a headache in my life. I didn't know what it was, but it felt like somebody hit me with a ball-peen hammer on my head.
Goodness.
I lost 33 pounds in the next 3 weeks. They isolated me from everybody. Didn't know what I had, didn't know what was going on. And it took quite a while to actually come up with the diagnosis of that. But I had been exposed to some excrement from beavers, which carried a parasite, which also had some viruses on it.
Oh my goodness.
And what had happened is I got a very severe brain infection. So severe that actually they told Dawn and my wife that she needed to get prepared, that I probably had maybe a week to live.
Oh my goodness.
And so when I found that out, and obviously I lived beyond that, so I said to the doctor, what happened? And he said, well, your immune system kicked in. I said, well, that's cool. Is there any way we can do that, like, on purpose?
Right.
Like, what a great thing if we could, if we could actually do that on purpose. What could we do with that?
Right.
And he said, no, I don't think so. Not that I know of. And he actually was kind enough to say to me, you need to take some vitamin C and B vitamins for the rest of your life, and hopefully that'll help. And that was the extent of his sort of breadth of knowledge. And I want to say this because I had this conversation just a couple of days ago, knowing that I was going to be with you. My personal physician here, who is a terrific family physician, he said one of the things he would love to see changed is this FDA, Health Canada rule that you need to check everything with your physician. he said, it's impossible for me to know everything. It's just impossible. I can't keep up with medicine, let alone, all the advances in nutrition, keeping up with what's going on in food, like we're going to talk about today. It's just impossible. I just would love if that got taken away.
Is that new to Canada? Is that a new rule to Canada?
Oh, that's not. No,
It's
no,
not.
no.
Okay.
No, I mean, if you see an ad on TV for a drug, the first, one of the things they're going to say is make sure you check with your physician. If you're launching a nutritional product in the Canada, United States, you have to put that. You have to put right on the label. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. Do not take this unless you consulted with your personal physician. So that's an FDA and Health Canada rule. So that's one of the things he would like to see stop. But I went, okay, so what am I going to do? So I obviously recovered the best I could from that. I still wasn't very good. I would tire very easily. And I didn't understand at the time two things that I didn't understand. And I'd like your listeners to understand.
Sure.
Your brain uses 30 or more % of your total energy for the day. So people wonder sometimes, I really haven't done anything today but work in my office and I'm so fatigued. Yes, because your brain is just sucking the energy, right? It's working very, very hard. And in some cases it can use, even up to 40% of your body energy. So then you're just bagged at the end of the day. So that's something people don't know. The other thing that I don't think a lot of people know or talk about, even in the medical profession, is we have our body's immune system, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, and how food is impacting that. But we have a separate immune system for our brain because it's such a high energy consumer. So I just want people to think about this just for a minute, if they can remember their original biology class when they studied a cell and they found it really boring. What are we studying this thing for anyway? What's it mean? But ultimately, the purpose of a cell is very simple. It makes protein, it generates energy, and it replicates. And every cell in the body, they have to do that. And in that process, they generate heat and they generate, I call it smoke to make it easy for people to understand. So there's residual material from the process of making proteins and making energy. That has to be cleared out of the cell. Your brain is processing, I don't know, the estimates on what your brain processes are all over the map. But, the last time I heard, it's like 40 billion things per second, right? But think of the energy consumption of that. Right? So that's why our brain has to have a separate mechanism to reduce the waste material. So this immune system that is inherent just in our brain and becomes really important in concussions, brain infections, etc., to make sure that we're dealing with that part of our brain. So I decided, okay, I need to study nutrition. I need to get really thorough in this. We've seen this result with the in the pregnant women. It's very good. What's going on with food? And once I started studying food, I was, can I use the word gobsmacked?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I was totally. Do you know that there's only one native vegetable in North America?
No.
Want to guess what it is?
One native vegetable in North America?
So when all of our ancestors came here and they're looking for what to eat vegetable wise, we're not talking like there's berries here, right? So we all have, there's berries like, wild raspberries, wild blueberries, wild strawberries. But there was only one vegetable native to you and I in this northern sort of part of North America, which was artichokes.
Oh, that I would not have guessed at all. I was
right? I was like, what? I don't even.
Why
I mean, artichokes. But these special artichokes that could grow in our climate, they could withstand frost, right? Now I don't even know anybody that grows artichokes on a grand scale, at least native artichokes. So that led me down this path to understanding literally all of our food that we eat today has come from another country.
That's true. That is true.
Okay. Our grains came from Europe. for the most part. Our corn comes from South America, maybe a little bit from Mexico, but mostly South America. A kale, which became a health food for reasons I don't understand, kale was cultivated as caterpillar food.
That's funny.
So in Italy, the people growing tomatoes or tomatoes, whatever people want to call them, and grapes in their vineyards, they would grow and they cultivated this very hardy kale for the caterpillars to eat. The caterpillars become moths and pollinate all of the other vegetables. So they were literally never thought of as human. Kale was never thought of as a human food. And it surprised me one day when I'm hearing all these people talking about the significant benefits of kale and so on and so forth. And I'm like, that's actually caterpillar food, and we're going to make it into human food. But my point, it's really kind of funny, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm sorry, because kale is so popular. I mean, it's, are you eating your kale, basically, is how it's
yeah.
presented. So when I hear caterpillar food, I'm just taken back. So now I'm going to go do research.
Well, maybe it will help us morph into something more amazing, right? If we eat
Right,
our kale. But
right.
I was just surprised at that. So then I got involved with food science here in Canada. And fortunately, we have a food science lab not too far away. I got involved with them, and we started talking about GMO foods and why GMO foods.
Right.
So just to clear something up with people, you're eating GMO foods. Even if they say to you it's not GMO, it is. If you're eating potatoes or corn, it came from another country to grow in our climate here. Some modification had to be done to it.
Right.
Now, let's be reasonable and understand that when our ancestors came here, when my grandparents came here, some that went to the United States, some that came to the most eastern part of Canada, they brought their potatoes with them. But those potatoes over time had to adapt to the soil conditions, the climate conditions. So even unintentionally, even if we weren't doing anything with those plants, they themselves would modify to this climate.
Right.
Right. So I'm not saying that GMO is necessarily a bad thing, but the extent we're taking GMO to now. So if you're it's and this relates to us and our glutathione. So I want to make that connection here as we and remind me to do that. But if a plant comes and it modifies itself to the climate, that's different than when we take it into a lab and we modify it to make more sugar. We modify it to be, hardier for insects, etc. Those are two completely different processes.
Now, when you talk about making it hardier in the modification, you're talking about molecularly structuring it a different format so that
Correct.
it can be on the shelf or produced.
Let's take Florida oranges, because
Right.
I wrote my thesis on how does your body know to stay sick.
Right.
And I was looking for something in nature that would kind of give me a clue. A thesis is you get an idea and then you try to find something to
Right.
justify why you're saying that, and hopefully your peers
Exactly.
will go, "Hey, what a cool idea!" Right? We'll let you we'll give you a degree for that. But I wrote my thesis on how does your body know to stay sick, and I looked at citrus crops. One of the things about citrus crops is they will, when the temperature starts to lower, so in Florida, sometimes they do get frost and bad weather, the citrus crops will, the oranges, lemons, limes, all of those will coat themselves with a glycoprotein. So that's a sugar protein, which enables them to withstand some frost up to about let's see, we got to do a conversion here, 3 degrees. So that's around 5.5, 6 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So they're good up to about, somewhere around 26, 27 degrees Fahrenheit. They're still fine. If it goes much below that, then it'll damage the crop. So they did that on their own. That's something they did on their own. They invented this glycoprotein. And so what of course the industry has done is went, well, how can we take that and modify that glycoprotein? Can we stimulate that glycoprotein so that the fruit can withstand more frost? And or can we modify it so it can withstand more heat, for instance? Can we modify it so it doesn't need so much water? So these are the molecular GMO things that we have no history of. We have no idea what they're doing. So when we get in there, we change the genetics or we put a chemical in there of some sort. We literally have no history on these. And so when we look at the GMO foods you and I are talking about, the oldest ones would be maybe 40 or 50 years old. Well, in the course of life, that's not long.
Right.
And so for you and I to adjust to that orange, which maybe we ate as a kid and now we're eating as an older person, what I find in my practice is we have a lot more people reacting to food. They have allergic reactions. They have severe rashes. They, just on odd things. I ate an orange and I sneezed for 15 minutes after. That wasn't the orange, right? That wasn't the original orange.
No.
So now we're seeing all of these potential long-term chronic ailments appearing because now we can't get this out of the food. There's no possibility of getting out of the food. The worst example of genetically damaged food, in my opinion, is grains. And when we look at that, so grains here, the variety of grains that we grow now, the wheat and so on, winter wheat, where people can plant it in September, it can freeze, then it regrows in the spring.
Right.
Well, what have they done to that seed and to enable that? And then what does that mean when we process that into flour? And even if we were growing that on our own and grinding it into flour on our own, what is the purity of that? And there's no testing done on that. Like there's nobody takes that to a lab and says, hey, I'm growing my own wheat here and I've ground it into my own flour. What's the purity? What's left in that?
Right.
Then we look at what's happened to our soil over time. Soil erosion, just different things. People don't understand lightning is a very necessary part of the ecology of plants. Like,
I'm glad you mentioned that. Lightning
yes,
is a very important part to our plants. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Can you tap on that just for a minute and let people understand that? Because it's something I have tapped on, but I get questioned, and I don't know enough about it, but do you could tap on it as to why?
Yeah, so without lightning, plants can't absorb nitrogen. And if we can't absorb nitrogen, then we really can't produce high quality fruits and vegetables, right? So the flash of lightning, the frequency, the fabulous frequency of that literally causes the earth to release nitrogen, which is now available for the plants to use, right? And most farmers are relying on ammonia to do that, which
that's what I was hoping we'd get to, was that part. They're relying on the ammonia now.
yes, yeah. Instead of I'm always I live on the West Coast. We live in a rainforest. Lightning very seldom happens here. Right? So what else is here? Well, we don't grow very much in the rainforest. That is something that you and I would eat and live off of, unless we're trying to live off mushrooms. But we don't grow fruits and vegetables in this immediate area. Out in the valley, far away from here, where they do get the lightning, they grow everything. Blueberries, and they grow everything, fruits and vegetables, and so on. But it was an extremely big hole that I got myself into. The other thing I found out, which just shocked me, and I think there's just been a intentional marketing misconception on organics. So if you ask people, or you hear somebody say to somebody, you bet, you would be better off eating organics all the time. I think what most people feel they're being told is to eat a fruit or vegetable that's never been subject to a herbicide, pesticide, or any other kind of treatment.
You are absolutely correct.
And that is completely incorrect.
It is incorrect.
Right?
Please explain further, yes, because people need to understand this as we continue this journey on this truth.
So there's multiple organic herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers that are authorized for use.
Right.
Currently, as a whole, there's 88,000 chemicals authorized for use in our food, whether it's in processing or whether it's in the growth. There's 88,000 and it's growing. The number of that is growing. And of course, some of the things they're trying to do is battle the variance in climate. I don't like the word climate change because the climate's changed all my life. Right. I remember as a kid walking to school in no snow, walking to school in 4 feet of snow, having winters where the sun would shine and we wouldn't even get frost. And then the next year we'd be frozen out. So I've lived through that all my life. I don't think there's really anything extraordinary going on, except that we're now more aware. And of course, it can be shoved, it can be broadcast, that awareness,
yeah,
and used. But yeah, so that's one of the really, I think, biggest myths. And there was a study done in California. Now, California is the strictest state with their Prop 95 law down there. If you're making a nutritional supplement, if it has any ingredient in there that has even been related to a cancer study, you have to put a label on it saying this contains something that may cause cancer. It's foolish in the sense that they're grasping at straws. There are regulations around the growing of fruits and vegetables. There's literally, depending on the county food is grown in, the definition of organic can change. So you can't trust organic. So they did this study just recently, just during COVID, and they found, just going into the grocery store, buying organics, non-organics, taking them back to the lab, testing them, that organics had at least as much, if not in some cases, more herbicides and pesticides in them than non-organic food. So my rule for food, local only. If you can go to the farmer and buy it, and he's not using anything or they're not using anything, then that is worth the money. If you're going to a grocery store, just remember this. You go pick up something and you look at it. This orange came from Korea? Really? I didn't even know they grew oranges in Korea. So in order to get that orange into North America, whether it's the United States or Canada, it has to be fumigated, irradiated, it has to be treated. We don't want the bugs that are on that orange into our environment. So it's treated terribly before it's exported. We did some studies back in, this would be about 2010, 11, 12, for the Canadian government, where we showed that when we export grain, for instance, so we take grain, we take it into a lab, we look at it, and it has, let's say, 70% of the amino acids are available in that grain. Once it's treated for export, that drops to like 10%.
Oh my.
Oh yeah. So when you're shopping and you see something that's come from way far away, first of all, it was picked when it wasn't ripe.
Right.
It's put in a nitrogen solution to hold it, to keep all the oxygen away as it's being shipped. Then it's irradiated at the border. So there's, in my opinion, you might as well just buy, the least expensive fruit and vegetable, unless you have some other reason not to. But yeah, they're treated, exported food is I mean, and we're all subject to that. We're all getting exported food. So we're just not getting the nutrition out of it.
Exactly.
So
and that's something I want to point out really quickly that you just talked about. You said it's being picked before it's ripe.
yes.
So once it comes off the vine, it's immediately no longer receiving any nutritional value from its host. It's done.
Correct.
It's got what it's gotten and we're done. So it's not correct in its ripeness. So here we are putting it now in a what you call nitrogen bath. Is
Yeah.
that what it is?
Yeah.
So now we go into a nitrogen bath, and we're now being transported to our next place at this point. And now we're getting fumigated because we don't want, let's just use the Korean orange, we don't want their bugs coming into our society or into our environment.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So now this orange has lost every bit of its value.
Pretty much.
And it now has carcinogen activity to it.
Potentially. Yes, potentially.
So I want you guys to understand this. That's why I wanted to dissect this out as you're watching today, because one thing Alan's really good with is giving you that formulation from A to Z. And it's so important to hear this, because when you're in the store and you're thinking that that cucumber or that orange or that grape has value to it, technically, Alan, that grape or that orange only has maybe 10% of value to it.
Yes. Yes. So, for the nutrients we're looking for it, right?
Right.
If we're looking for vitamin C, if we're looking for other things.
So that leads me to talk to the next step. If we're
just before we go there,
sure,
you made a really important point, and I want to pick up on that. When it's picked before it's ripened, I'll just take avocados as a typical example. So
right.
every fruit or vegetable before it ripens, just before it ripens, it has the highest concentration of chemicals it makes to protect it from predators.
That's true. That is true.
Okay, so let's just take an avocado. When they pick avocados before they're ripe and they look at the skins of those avocados, there's something like 36 different potential carcinogenic chemicals in there that we're not supposed to eat. Like we don't eat we would never go buy a really hard avocado and throw that in our shake. We tend to let it ripen a bit and then hopefully take it out of the skin before we do that. And then I see people on TikTok saying, oh no, you just throw your avocado in and you mix it all up because the nutrition's in the skin. And it's like, no, it's not. It's full of chemicals that plant has used to protect itself.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah. Bananas. I mean, you go to the store and you look at the bananas one day and they're as green as they can be. Now, that doesn't mean they're inedible. Like some people like green bananas and they tend to have a little less sugar content when they're green. I don't find them very pleasant to eat. But I don't know if people have noticed this. As soon as you take them out of the store and bring them home, in a very brief period of time, maybe hours or a couple of days, they start to turn brown.
Right.
Now, why is that?
Well, they're taking out their environment from where they were.
You know those little water squirter things they're spraying your veggies?
Yeah.
That's not water.
Well, I've seen smoke actually come off of those water sprayers.
They always have preservative of some sort in there. Yes. Yeah. So when I always make sure when I'm shopping, you stand there and the spray is happening. Well, I will actually go to the back of the counter, back into the fruit or vegetable to get something that hasn't been subject to that. And it makes it really all more important to wash your stuff when you bring it home.
Yes.
Here's the other thing that I think people this is another shocker to me. So the government has demanded that we have an organic fruit and vegetable section. People go into a store and they go look for the organics, right?
Right.
Have they ever been into the distribution part of that store?
Probably not. I mean, I wouldn't anticipate anyone being allowed back there.
No, I'm the only guy that has the courage to go walk through the door and nobody ever says to me, hey, you don't belong here. What are you doing? So I walk into this very well-known, I won't give its names because it'll get us in trouble, but very well-known Whole Foods kind of store, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying it's Whole Foods, but it's that kind of store. So people get the image. It's a Canadian store. So I walk in, I walk around the back, they're unloading trucks. There is no separation in the back between organics and inorganics. They're put on the same cart, trucked out to the front. Oh, this is an organic, got to put that over there. This is not, I got to put it over there. So there's no separation in the back. So I'm looking at that going, this is just so
So
bizarre.
there's
This.
no real definition in the transportation to the front of the store where they're putting it on. They're just they're deciding what is.
They just no, their job is to keep the shelves full. So they just go
Right.
back and get whatever they need, load it on a cart, bring it out and put it
And
on a
bring it out.
shelf.
Okay.
That's it. There's nobody sort of going, okay, in the back, here's the organic fruit and vegetable section. You know,
Wow.
we'll better take that out on a cart first. It just goes out to I was shocked. I've done 3 stores now, and there's been no delineation between organics and non-organics.
Wow. Okay, that's
Okay,
interesting.
so we need to really get onto this glutathione thing a little bit.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I'm ready. So let me kind of set this up for everybody here. So one of the aspects, and I never heard of glutathione until I met Alan, probably 10 years ago now. Alan and I have known each other, and because that's when I started my journey. And I was blown away when Alan spoke the very first time, guys. I'm not even kidding. When he spoke, I was glued about glutathione and every aspect of what he had to talk about. So one of the supplements, I guess you can say, that you don't, one of the things you do not get in your daily diet is glutathione. And Alan is the authority on this for sure. He is going to talk to you guys about why it is so important. We are in a, I'm calling it a crisis mode with us right now. I mean, we just came out with this study that, you know, Lunchables that we've been sending our kids has 70% lead in it. And not only that, it's processed food to begin with. We just talked about this, you know, a couple of days ago with my own son who has grandchildren, my grandchildren, and 70% is what America is saying. It's okay. It's okay. It's just 70%. It has no, you know, real value to it. It's not going to harm you. I'm going to turn this over now to Alan in this respect. I'm going to leave this right here because he's going to explain to you why this is so important. Glutathione is so important. And when you're out there in your grocery store and you're shopping, I want you to understand that what he's just given you prior to this conversation we're going to have, you need to hear, because everything you're hearing is everything that you're being programmed to know or think. It's all okay. It's not okay. So Alan, I want you to take it away with glutathione. Please explain what that is, how we need it, and why it is so important.
Absolutely. So my journey, if we go back to my journey, when after 5 years of suffering with this brain situation, this doctor said to me, you need to go to Montreal. Now, most people in America would not know that Montreal, McGill, University of Montreal, that's kind of our Harvard, if you will. But they have been #1 in immune research for many, many years. Starting way back in the mid 70s, 74, 75, they started researching the immune system. And he said to me, you need to go. And I said, well, you know, flying is really terrible for my head, like the pressure. And then after I get off the plane, like, you know, I usually just crash. He said, I'll make the arrangements. You just get yourself there. So I did. I flew down to Montreal and I went to this research institute in Montreal where they've been studying the immune system. And I told them, you know, I've flown out here, brain injury, blah, blah, blah. And they mixed me up some stuff and I ate it. And it tasted like Elmer's glue, to be honest. It wasn't really that palatable. And then he mixed me up some more and I ate it. And then I went out for dinner. I enjoyed a really beautiful evening and my head didn't hurt. And I was like, what did you do? And so this one researcher said to me, well, we just gave you something to optimize your glutathione. I'm like, I've been in a medical profession for now, I think at that time, 25 years. I've never heard of this. He says, yeah, no, most people haven't. He said, the reason for that is you get your glutathione from your mom. And the medical sort of philosophy was you got what you got and you're stuck with it. You can't do anything about it. But our research, this is him saying that our research has shown that we can actually modulate, increase or decrease. So modulation means it's not boosting. It's If you're overproducing, we can get rid of it. If you're underproducing, we can make more of it. We can modulate your glutathione levels to the genetically specified level in your body, so it's genetically controlled. And we can recycle it in your liver, which is the #1 place where you recycle your glutathione. So even if you were, let's say, compromised as a young person, so these people, children that are born with ADHD or they're born with autism, we can literally look at that and go, they are immune compromised. And what can we do about that? Well, now we know that we can modulate their glutathione levels. Remember, we have this in our brain, and we want to get to that. So what is glutathione? The easiest way to remember what glutathione is I like to use the word IDA, 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 right? So it's a master molecule in our body for the usage and management of oxygen. That's really what it does. So in the master molecule of oxygen, it's the master of inflammation. So I stands for inflammation. So it's the master molecule for controlling inflammation. We need inflammation. We just don't need much inflammation. Right. We'll talk about that in a second. D stands for detoxification. This is where it becomes really important in the foods that we're eating, and we can't control the fact that they've had a lot of chemicals put on them. We need to detox. So glutathione can actually take lead, mercury, arsenic, all of these heavy metals and damaging things, has the ability to reduce their levels in our body. And the A stands for antioxidant. So you can eat all fruits and vegetables and antioxidants you want. They have very minimal effect if your glutathione levels are low. The way we're constructed, there's an amino acid called cysteine. Kind of hard to say, cysteine. We have, as humans, no transport mechanism. So even though cysteine is in vegetables, asparagus and celery and lots of other things, spinach, so on, it has levels of cysteine. It's in meat. It's in a lot of food. That cysteine was used by either the plant or the animal to optimize their immune function. But we have no great transport mechanism in our intestinal tract to absorb the molecule cysteine.
So we have no way of converting it. Is that what you're saying? We can't convert it.
We can't absorb it.
Okay.
Yes. So the first thing science did was say, okay, well, then we can make it into a drug, which they did, called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. And we can use that to modify, and we can get this molecule, this amino acid, into our body. That molecule is the trigger mechanism for the manufacture of glutathione at the cellular level. So what McGill found out is, and now, of course, N-acetylcysteine has been taken off the market pretty much in the United States.
Yeah.
And in Canada, it's a Schedule II drug, so you literally have to go to a pharmacist and ask them for it, and they give you it and tell you that you can only take it for 6 weeks at a certain dosage. But that was the first attempt to actually modify glutathione. So when you would take glutathione, glutathione then can start to have better control of the inflammatory response. So chronic inflammation, chronic diseases. We looked at 144 chronic diseases, and the one common denominator in all these people with a chronic disease, low glutathione. We looked at centenarians, people that live over the age of 100. The one common denominator in centenarians, high glutathione.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just review what I said.
Yeah.
People that are sick, 100% of them, low glutathione. People that are living to 100 or more, high level glutathione.
Wow. Wow. So I have to ask a question really quickly. Have you tapped into the blue zones and their glutathione?
Yes.
and what are we seeing?
So that was one of the big questions, is why can we have these variances in diet, lifestyle? You know, we have people that are smoking cigarettes and cigars and still living to be 100.
Right.
What is the common denominator in the blue zones? High glutathione, high immune function, high anti-inflammatory ability, high detoxification ability, right?
Right.
When they're eating fruits and vegetables, when they do get some vitamin C or some B vitamins or something, your higher levels of glutathione allow you to optimize the ability of vitamin C to do its job, or boswellia, or whatever else you're taking.
Right.
Without glutathione, they have very limited and short action in your body. So in my opinion, after all the research I've done over 2 decades, I can't think of a person on the planet that wouldn't benefit from a glutathione supplementation. And as you know, back in 2016, we launched a product. That product was, I made that product, I formulated that product specifically for children with autism. And by optimizing their glutathione and giving them the correct B vitamins, because almost 100% of kids with autism have an MTHFR, a genetic condition where their MTHFR gene doesn't work properly, and
Right.
possibly their COMP2 gene doesn't work properly. So we can bypass that with methylated folate, methylated folic acid, methylfolate,
Right.
and methylated B12. We can bypass that, and that has a great impact on their cognition and their ability to make connections in their brain.
Right.
And then the glutathione reduces the amount of free oxygen they're producing. So kids with these focus challenges, they're producing very high levels of free oxygen in their brain, which is interrupting the ability of the hormones and chemicals to talk to one another. So we reduce that down, and once again, you get better cognition. So what McGill and other researchers discovered is we could actually manipulate, not in a bad way,
Right.
we could manipulate the cysteine molecule by bonding it with sulfur. Now, we have a lot of sulfur in our body. We have a lot of hydrogen. Sulfur is very necessary in our body for energy production, for many things. Right. Methylation, detoxification, we need sulfur, we need hydrogen. So we could take a hydrogen, or we could methylate this and join these 2 amino acids together, and they would freely cross the intestinal tract. Once they come to the cell level, they immediately divide into an individual amino acid, and we have receptor sites. This is how important this is. We literally have receptor sites on every cell in our body for this amino acid. When that amino acid locks into a receptor site, it immediately triggers an enzyme which grabs a glutamate or glutamine molecule, attaches it. That triggers another enzyme, and you make your glutathione. Every cell overproduces glutathione and puts some back into the blood, where it's held as reduced glutathione. So, of course, people making nutritional products decide, well, why don't we just give people reduced glutathione? And here's why. It just sits in your blood. It doesn't get into the cell. And even if we shoot it into the cell, if we put it in a liposome form, or we put it in some other form, and we are able to get it to cross into the cell, it's not your glutathione.
Right.
So here's a really important point. I can't use your glutathione, and you can't use mine. My glutathione is made for me. Your glutathione is made for you. It's very individual, and it has the ability to modulate over time. So let's say, tomorrow I had the fortunate privilege to move to Hawaii. I'm now exposed to different pollens and different things that I haven't been exposed to. My glutathione is actually going to change, and that means my immune function is going to change to accommodate to that change. Right. And it's one of the things that when you hear people talking about the time change and the effect of time changes, one of the things that happens is we interrupt our natural sort of circadian rhythm of producing glutathione and producing other hormones, and takes a little while to catch up to that. But there's no long-term consequences from time changes. Otherwise, our ancestors would have all died on their way over here.
Say we wouldn't be here today.
We wouldn't be here. Yeah. So here's what's really important. You cannot eat enough food to optimize your glutathione to have an immunological impact. If you tried, you would need to eat 52 pounds of broccoli, 18 raw eggs, 3 pounds of raw meat. In order to, now you can't do that. You can't eat that much food. So the idea, and I hear this taught all the time, that people, you get everything you need from food. No, you don't get everything you need from food. You cannot optimize your glutathione and stimulate immunological function from food. You have to supplement with it. And so recently I made another formula where we put we put a small amount of liposomal glutathione in. It's a trigger. It's just there for a trigger molecule. It's not there for immunological activity. Okay. And then we put the amino acids in that formula along with some other phytonutrients that support glutathione activity. That product's called lonicerna longevity, and it's readily available. You can get that, but that was made on purpose. So the original product that I took is a protein product. It's very fine. It's very dusty. It's very difficult to work with. Kids won't eat it, and just really, they won't eat it. And most adults struggle with it. So we decided to make a capsule and put these amino acids in a capsule so that people could take it. And we use a very specific berry in that formula. It's called the lonicera berry. So the product is actually called Lonicera longevity. Lonicera grows in Canada. It's one of our hidden things in Canada. In Japan, Lonicera berry is called the berry of longevity. And the reason we chose it is its anthocyanin content is about 7 times greater than blueberries or other types of blueberry. It kind of looks like a blueberry. It's bigger. It's about the size of the end of your thumb as a berry.
It's bigger than a blueberry, yeah.
Yeah, it's way bigger than a blueberry, but it's very, very rich in active anthocyanins and other polyphenols. So we put that together. The polyphenols do have other activity for the cardiovascular system in reducing inflammation and so on. So it's a very good formula, but you have to supplement. My message to people is, I found out the hard way through my brain injury. I had to supplement glutathione. I had to modulate my glutathione. I still do to this day. And if you have a child that's suffering with cognition problems, the very first thing you want to do is give them glutathione. But for the average person who feels healthy and they're just wanting to protect themselves from what's going on in the food industry, glutathione is the method by which we get lead, mercury, all these toxins that we're exposed to. That's how we get them out of our body. That's the natural process to get them out of their body.
Can I ask on the Lonicerna longevity, can children take that?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, it's very child safe. Yeah.
Okay, so down to a 5-year-old or?
Yeah, if they're younger than a 5-year-old, just take it out of the capsule and put it in a drink. They can take it. It doesn't, age is insignificant.
Okay.
We actually have had infants on, they'll put infants on glutathione by inhalation, especially if they're asthmatic or whatever. Yeah. So no, there's nothing in there that would harm a child. They're do no harm product. I do
have a quick question for you.
Oh,
I see a lot of individuals, doing like the IV bag glutathione. Where does that come from, and how does that actually differentiate?
So that comes from research from Florida by a Dr. Perlmutter.
Okay.
Very, very good guy. Dr. Perlmutter is an extremely competent individual. And what he found is for people with Parkinson's disease, let's say you want to go to your daughter's wedding, but you have Parkinson's. If we give you a glutathione IV, because it's active in the blood, it will give you the energy for maybe 6-7 hours to enjoy something like that.
Wow.
It's very temporary. It's not your own glutathione, but it will have that activity. So people will go for a glutathione injection and they will feel something right away. it's used a lot in the movie industry where, you know, the action films need to pump themselves up.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term solution, and here's why. Exogenous glutathione, because it's not yours, will actually cause keloid scars in your veins. So if you're getting it on a regular, constant basis, they'll have to change veins all over the place, and eventually you're building keloids. Why would you want to build keloid scars in your veins, right?
And I wanted to address this for this reason. So I'm sorry that I kind of put you on the spot with this, but I felt a real need to address this because
Yes, thank you.
the lonicerna longevity is going to be key to anyone like myself who has been out in this world eating what's been coming out of these shelves, not being cognitive enough. I mean, you know, just now getting into people and saying, hey, you know, this is not what you should be doing. You should be doing this over here. But if you're going to do this, please, you know, do this on top of this. Okay. And that's what I'm sorry, this is what Alan's trying to explain to you, is that glutathione is an important key to what we just mentioned, the lead, the mercury, the arsenic, all these things that we're ingesting on a daily basis, guys. This is what you can do to help yourself in longevity, and in quality to life. So I'm sorry I interrupted. I just really wanted to point that out.
No, it's a really good point, because people, you know, we live in this sort of Pop-Tart society where people want instant whatever. And if you're a relatively healthy person, you may not feel something, but I can assure you it's doing something in your body.
Right.
For sure. And the other thing I wanted to mention, if you're a really healthy person, so glutathione is lowest in the morning, and so it's best to take it in the morning.
Right.
However, there's an exception to that. If you're somebody who works out, so you're really a healthy person, you get up in the morning, you feel good, maybe your glutathione levels are high in the morning, but you want to increase your ability to exercise and work out. If you take glutathione about an hour before you work out, so if you took 2 capsules of longevity before you work out, glutathione that your body makes has been shown clinically here in Canada, 42 clinical trials, to increase muscle strength and endurance by 11 to 14%.
Wow.
And then increase recovery time or shorten recovery times, right? So if you have an athlete who's listening to this going, well, I eat really good, I feel really good, how's this going to benefit me? Not only is it going to detox you, which you're not going to feel that, but you can take it and go work out, and you will find that you have a much better workout and probably a shorter recovery time. So just something that was a clinical trial that was sponsored literally by the World Cycling Association here in Canada. After the Lance Armstrong doping scandal.
Was that after the Lance Armstrong thing?
Yes, because if you look at if you look at what Lance Armstrong did, he just wanted to get more oxygen. Right. And that's what glutathione does. Glutathione attaches oxygen to your red blood cells. So you can get a similar effect not using a drug by optimizing glutathione, you know, for a brief period of time. You'll get more oxygen to work out. So
absolutely. I'm so glad you addressed this. Oh my gosh, guys. I hope you guys really got some great value here. I know you did. I know you did. So the workbook that comes with this event, everything that I have spoken to Alan on today, it's in your workbook, guys. So I hope you took your notes. And if you didn't grab that workbook yet, go grab the workbook, because it's got everything in there that, like I said, we spoke with Alan about today, but also it gives you the opportunity to come back on Monday, the 29th of April at 11 a.m. And it gives you an opportunity to ask him questions. It's a brief period of time. It's only for about 30 to 45 minutes. You'll get to ask him some questions. But he's here for you at that point. So make sure you did that. Alan, you are amazing. I could listen to you all day long. I mean, I've got 4 pages of notes sitting here just from this, you know, not even hour interview here. And you are just amazing. You're loaded with knowledge. I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. I can't say enough, guys. I can't say enough. Alan is amazing. Alan, how can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you if, you know, in the future they would like to say, hey, I saw you. I really need to resonate back with you. How can we reach you?
Well, I would say the best way is through social media. Right. I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram or TikTok. I'm just on Facebook. You can find me, Alan Ogden in Vancouver.
Okay.
You
Okay.
reach out to me, just say, hey, you can send me a messenger message. I listened and I'd like to connect. That would be the best way.
All right. Or
What's
reach out to
what
me, guys. Let me know. I'll connect you with them. Believe me.
Yes, through and I was just going to say through you as well, because
Yeah.
we're well connected, and
Yes.
and that's a really good thing. And I would really think that would be great, because then you would have a measure of the benefit of our conversation today, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everybody's got an opportunity right now to grab this this event for a lifetime access as well. So they've got an opportunity to have that at their beck and call anytime they'd like. So, if you haven't went and done that, go do that. Sign up to get this on a lifetime access. Alan is absolutely amazing. And I love you, Alan. You know that. I tell you that all the time. You're absolutely phenomenal. Is there a way that everyone can go and catch that longevity, the lonicerna longevity? How can they get in touch with that product? How can they possibly get their hands on it?
Yeah, very easily. I do have a web link for that.
Okay.
It's called Modexus, Modexus, modexus.com, and then /CGP. That's CGP. And they can go there, just hit the shop button, look for Lonicera longevity, and you can get it sent out to your house very, very quickly, very easily.
And I
Thank you for that.
encourage everyone to do that very much so. Like I said, if you learned anything today at all, the store shelves are not helping us, and your food is not what you thought it was. And as I'm going to reiterate this for many reasons, you heard Alan in the very beginning explain to you that your food, all food, is genetically modified. So, with that being said, you have already been exposed. It's not like you're not exposed. You have been for quite a number of years. So, why not take that next step and put yourself in that position of
Yeah,
having the capability of giving yourself longevity and quality to life?
absolutely. Yes. Well, I love you too. It's
Thank
always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for doing what you're doing. It's a very, very important topic, and I'm glad you picked up on it, and that you're doing this as well. So,
Thank you so much. All right.
all
Well,
right.
guys, that is a wrap for today. Alan, if you'll just hold on for a minute, everyone, please go and grab that workbook if you have not. And again, meet us back here on Monday, April 29th at 11 a.m. sharp. We will make it a short session for Q&A for everyone. And again, questions before then, reach out to me. Let me know. I will connect you to Alan. Okay. All right, everyone. Have a beautiful and wonderful day. Thank you for being here. And we will be back.
Yeah.